Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I am the Dead Man and this is a review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 Episode 5 Through the Lens of Time. And this teaser is one of the longest teasers I've ever seen for Star Trek. So basically it starts off with the medical officer's log. There's an ensign that we've been seeing past few episodes that's been working with Mbenga, and he's giving his log and how he's so happy to be here and all this stuff. And Mbenga is talking to him, and they're talking about Corby, and you see Corby and Chapel in the background. They're like chit-chatting. He kind of gives them a weird look, and all this weird stuff. And then Corby and Chapel tell him, or talking in the corridor about this mission they're about to go on. It's like an archaeological thing, and he says that he always gets nervous on the first day, and Chapel's kind of like giving him shit, making fun of him a little bit, and then Corby walks away and goes wherever he's going, and she runs into Leon, and they're talking about Spock, and she's talking about how she's glad to see them, Spock and Leon talking, and whatever. And it's the whole conversation is like this teenager conversation. You'd have to watch it. I watched it a second time, and it came off a little tiny bit better, but it's still like 90210 in space. It's still it's just not good. The dialogue is not good. So then there's a little scene where Captain Batel is being examined by this ensign, and then she's like, "Oh, I feel so much better," and leaves. So Mbenga tells this. His name is Campbell. I forget the first name. Mbenga tells him that he's going to be going on this away mission with Chapel and Corby, and to not make him look bad in front of Corby. He's kind of joking, but and he's because this guy is like he's always wanted to go on an away mission. This would be like his first one, and so he like hugs Mbenga like awkwardly, and Mbenga's just kind of like it's like, "Why are you hugging me, dude?" He's trying to be professional, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm just excited." So then you have Spock and Chapel on the turbo lift, and I don't know if you notice in the original series they have these handles, and you have to hold the handle and tell the computer where you want to go in order to make the turbo lift work. And they have those handles, and I've seen them use them in past episodes, but for some reason they're not using them this time. And I don't, they light up and stuff. And it's like I say, for every one thing that they get right, they get something wrong, or two things wrong, or whatever. And it just never ceases to amaze me. Like, guys, what are you doing? Like, just watch the freaking show for that this is like a template for, and do that. Do those things that they do. How hard is it? It's like I keep saying, it's okay. Some people, I've listened to other people's reviews. I didn't want to do that, but it took me. I got behind on this review, so I wanted to listen to other people's reviews. And some people think they're using AI to write the scripts. I don't know if that's true or not. I thought that was part of the writers' strike, that they weren't supposed to use AI. But it seems to me like there's somebody, Kristen Meyer, who knows like surface level stuff about Star Trek, or at least is enough of a fan that can get those little details right. And then there's CW writers that they brought in, and that's why we ended up with what we ended up with. Is I don't get it. It's like, why not get 3 or 4 people, like they did with Deep Space Nine. They had Ron Moore and Stephen Ira Bear, who were both fans of Star Trek, and submitted script. I think it was Ron Moore that submitted scripts that got approved, before he was brought on, and then he was brought on into the writing room. He's the Klingon guy, they call him. He did all the Klingon stuff. But they don't do that. They don't have you don't have the Critical Drinker and Gary the Nerdrotic and Mahler submitting scripts, and they say, "Hey, I like your writing. Why don't we bring you guys on board?" And then they know the lore, and they know, they've seen the shows, they know the characters, they know how to write characterization. They did that with Terry Matalas. They did that with Terry Matalas for Picard season 3. He worked on Enterprise. He worked on Voyager. And season 3 got the most praise from the fans, and I guess that probably pissed off Kurtzman. So they give us this crap. And anyway, Spock and Chapel are on the turbo lift, and Spock doesn't say shit, and Chapel's like, "Oh, you're always silent when there's so much to talk about," and he still doesn't say anything. And she says, "I'm glad that you and Roger have become friends." And Spock says, "Friends is a relevant term." And I've said this before, when Ethan Peck is playing straight up Spock, he does a pretty good job. He delivers the lines sort of like Nimoy would. It's very Vulcan-y. But then when they have him do goofy shit, it's horrible. So it's not like there's bad actors on this show. There's not. They just are given horrible lines to deliver. So then the ensign, this guy Gamble, comes in, and he kind of interrupts the conversation, and he even says as much. "I'm interrupting something, aren't I?" And he's like, "Well, at least I'm glad that I have company on the way to the briefing." So they go to the briefing room. I don't know where it is located on the ship, but it's sort of like the observation lounge on the TNG. But they go to the briefing room, and they're talking about this dig, and these aliens have been asked to be part of the Federation a few times, and they've turned it down. But they kind of need Starfleet's help with this dig, so they're allowing like a limited amount of people there in a limited time period, and Ortega's brother is there. He's like filming a documentary for the about Starfleet and the Federation, and he's kind of like in the way, in a way, and I don't write this stuff down. It just comes off, my brain. I don't know, and Pike's kind of irritated, and he's like, hey, you're allowed to be here and all, but kind of knock it off a little bit, with the cameras and stuff. And Pelia is there, and she's annoying as ever, and interrupts Pike because they always have to interrupt Pike or emasculate men in any way that they can. And she has the ensign Ensign Gamble, like read off the agreement that Starfleet made with Ortega's brother, and Pike is like, okay, we're stuck with each other according to that thing, but you need to have some boundaries. So on the planet, they beam down. You have Ortega's brother, I forget his name, Chapel, Uhura, Corby, and Gamble. And they're setting up these deflector arrays. So they're going to use the deflector from the ship to shoot beams down onto these arrays that's going to acts as like a sort of laser, because there's like this temple structure. If you watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Petra, that temple that's inside the mountain, that's what that is. It's the same kind of thing. So Ortega's is kind of flirting with Uhura, and so they do the thing, and it reveals like this big temple. And Chapel calls up the ship and says, we're going to need a bigger landing party. Okay, so that's an homage to Jaws. The rest of the episode, I don't think is an homage to things. It's like they rip things off. Like I've already said, Indiana Jones. So I had my timer on because one of the reviewers said it was like a 9-minute teaser, so I wanted to time it. It came out at 10 minutes and 24 seconds. Okay, so yeah, one of the longer ones. So Spock and Leon beam down because those aliens are only willing to allow 2 more people. And Spock's the senior science officer, and of course Leon, because she's the better, who. There's Una, and then there's Pike. I mean, it's got to be her, right? Or Ortega's, but the less we see of her, the better. And Christina Chong, some people are saying that she's like a breakout character, and I agree, even though she's a descendant of Khan and all this stuff. But I think she'll end up going somewhere after this. Hopefully, I like her. I like her a lot. So there's all these like inscriptions and stuff and tablets that Corby has found from like hundreds of light years away, but they're related to this area, and they're trying to get Uhura to sort of figure out how to open the door, or how to interpret these inscriptions and stuff. And so she figures out that you have to have like a blood sacrifice and there's like this little panel thing, which looks like a hand scanner, sort of, and Corby like pulls out a knife and he's going to like cut his hand, and Chapel's like, hey, don't be drastic. So she walks up to it and looks at it and investigates it and kind of just sticks her finger in there, and it just sort of like pricks her finger and drops blood, and the doors, it scans her, and then the doors open. So she's basically the leader of this team. Now, some people were saying, why is she the leader of this team? She's only been part of the archaeological, with Corby for like 6 months. I think I'm fine with that because, let's say you're a student and you're going on an expedition. At some point you have to be sort of the leader of the group in order to like test your leadership abilities and things like that. I mean, I was in the Boy Scouts. We did similar type stuff, and so I'm fine with that. Although Spock is still like ultimately in charge, as far as like shit goes wrong, we got to get out of there, and shit goes wrong. Spoiler. So they go in, and they're talking about the whole environment and something, and Leon says fascinating. Okay, so she stole Spock's line. And then they find like this dead body, and it looks like the body had been there for like hundreds of years. And Leon speculates that they're like tomb robbers and they were trapped in there. So Spock is basically assessing the situation, and he's like, we need to leave because this is too dangerous right now. We need to go back to the ship. And he's recounting regulations and stuff. And Chapel's like arguing with him because why women have to emasculate the men in this show. And she argues with him and basically says, we should leave it up to this alien dude because it's his culture that they're trying to figure out. The alien guy, says something in his language, which Uhura interprets to that they want to know as much as they can about their culture. So Spock okays the mission, I guess. And so Ensign Campbell finds like this little glowy ball thing, which it's like you shouldn't be touching things in the first place because you don't know what it is, and I'm sure there's probably a Starfleet fleet regulation somewhere that says don't fucking touch it, but he does it anyway because he acts like a little teenager, acts like a little kid who's just found like so he opens it up, or it opens up, and it blows up in his face, and his eyeballs are like blown out. So they emergency beam him out of there. And it just occurred to me that when they walked in, they can't use the communicators. And they say that they can't beam out. So how did they beam this guy out? That just occurred to me. I now need to go watch it a third time to see because the whole thing is they're trapped in there too. No, wait, the door was open still. Okay, never mind. The door was open still. The So Dr. Mbinga puts like this visor over his eyes that's going to like regenerate, by his eyes. And as I've said in previously, General Martok is lost an eye, and why can't he have his eyes regenerated? Um, and then Jory, same. And somebody said somewhere that Jory's was very specific. Okay, then there's a guy on Discovery who has a prototype of Geordi's visor. What's his deal? Why couldn't they? So they keep bringing in the things that shouldn't be there, and keep insisting that this is the same timeline that we've always been following. It's not an alternate timeline. It's nothing. Okay. You keep insisting that. I keep seeing things to the contradict that. Um, so back on the ship, Gamble wakes up and he's like super calm, and he's like, it seems like he's not even in pain. Now, granted, Mbinga could have given him some pain pills, which would all, or whatever they have for pain, they obviously wouldn't have opiates, but it just weird. I mean, you would think if your eyes are missing, you'd be in pain and you would not be like so calm sitting there asking questions. And Pike comes in, he checks on him, says, hope basically just checking in. What's good? They show, compassion from the captain. That's good. So they're not completely idiotic, but Pike and Mbinga go to the side, and Mbinga's like, his eyes are not regenerating the way they're supposed to be, and there's something weird about that. He doesn't know what's going on, and they, that it doesn't work the way it's supposed to be working. So back on the planet, they're in the chamber and the camera that Ortega's brother has is able to go to the another chamber in this temple, or what we think is a temple, and sees like this statue that that's kind of weird, and the blue alien guy looks at it and says something in his language, which interprets that Uhura interprets into like evil, and they're saying, there's something evil in there that came from somewhere else and is like a parasite, and something like that, and the guy gets frightened, takes off running towards the door, and all of a sudden this laser like zaps him and the door closes. So now they're like, okay, what are we going to do now? We can't beam out, we can't communicate with the ship. And one of them says, maybe we should go further into the next chamber and see if there's a way out of here, And they kind of figure out that, like, because Chapel was leading and they had to do the blood sacrifice, that she should lead, and they should all walk in the same order that they walked in. And so it's Chapel and Leon, and then Ortega's brother. I'm going to say Ortega's. Same difference. And Uhura, and then Spock and Corgi take up the rear. So Chapel walks in. All of a sudden, it flips to it's just Chapel and Leon in the room with this statue, and no, everybody else is gone. So, the comms, like I said, don't work. So then they're kind of standing there trying to figure out what's going on with this statue, and they say the statue is both alive and not alive, and in here and not in here. So there's something weird going on with this whole room, and so Ortegas and Corby and Spock are in one room together, and then Ortegas and Uhura are in another room together. So then back on the ship, Gamble is M'Benga's like scanning Gamble, and he's like looking down at his pad, and he's like, something's wrong here. We need to do more tests. And Gamble's like, hey, Joseph, tell me what's going on. And he's like, well, according to these readings, you're brain dead. And he starts flipping out. He's like, I'm not dead. It's like, and the guy's acting is horrible. And he's freaking out, and M'Benga's like, no, it's like I said, we need to do more tests. Obviously you're not dead. Then back on the planet, Leon notices inscriptions on the statue. She says to Chapel, why is there an Earth language here? And she says, well, that's Chinese. And apparently Chapel can read Chinese. And it says, I forget what it said. It says something like, here but not here. And it basically was like scanning them, and I guess changed the language to Chinese. Why it wouldn't change to English, I have no idea. But why they, whatever. Then Spock and Corby are talking, and Corby says something about his, the way he's doing things, and Spock says that it's not that he doesn't like the way it's not that he doesn't like his archaeological digs or whatever, but he just doesn't. He neglects to take proper precautions, which is true, and I guess they're setting up for like when he goes off to the planet in TOS where he turns himself into an android and all that stuff. I guess they're kind of setting that up. And then there's a body on the floor. Oh, and they realize that they can use their communicators to themselves, but not out to the ship. So they're talking, and they're describing what each room looks like. And Uhura says, there's nothing here. Chapel's like, is there a giant statue there? And they're like, no. And Spock says, this room looks exactly like the room we just left. And he finds like this visor on the floor, and there's like a well. And he puts on the visor, and he looks at the well, and you see more of these little glowy things, and he says that there's like thousands of them. And so he, one of them, like, he picks up one of the balls, and starts to open it, and there's like this monster lizard thing that looks kind of like a Gorn pop out, and he closes it real quick and throws down the visor, which it was probably ill advised to put the visor on in the first place. You know, you shouldn't be touching things, right? Um, but I suspect the reason they did that is because there's an episode of TOS where has to put Spock puts on a visor to in order to see the Medusans, which the Medusans pop back up in Prodigy, because they want to get people with Easter eggs and callbacks, and that's supposed to make up for their shitty writing, I guess. Um, so then back on the ship, Gamble. I already said that. Yeah, Gamble is like freaking out. So these orbs, they're talking to Scotty and Pelia there, and Pike's trying, you know, because he brought, when they beamed him up, he brought one of the opened orb with him, and Pike. So they're trying to figure out what these things are, and Pelia says it looks like some sort of containment unit, and he's like, "What are you not telling us?" Because she's like hundreds of years old, and she says, "You know, this is something I haven't even seen. It's older than me, way older." And they, you know, it, you know, she doesn't. She's kind of freaked out by it too. It gives her the heebie-jeebies, as she says. She says she can't give a scientific explanation. So back in sickbay, Gamble like suddenly becomes possessed and starts talking shit to Mbinga. And Mbinga is like, "Who am I talking to right now?" Because he realizes this is not Gamble. He wouldn't be saying these type of things. And then Captain Badel, who's got the Gorn DNA in her, walks in, and all of a sudden she has like this rage on her face and starts attacking Gamble, and they fight for a little bit, and then of course also prior to this scene, Pike calls security to sickbay because he realizes that they're in trouble. You know, something's wrong. So they got that right. So he's, you know, she beats him up, but he gets away and he starts taking off running. And security chase after her, and he has one security guard held hostage with a phaser to his head, and he's like, I'm sorry. He turns back into the regular guy, and again, the acting is horrible, and he's like, I didn't mean to do that, you know, crying and stuff like that, and he's like, can you help me, doctor? And Mbinga says, I'll help you. Yes, I can help you. And the security, he puts down the phaser, and the security's like, should we take him to sick bay or to the brig? And I remember watching it, and I was like, they better fucking say the brig at this point, because he's dangerous. And thankfully, Mbinga says the brig. I was like, oh, thank God, they got something right. So then back on the planet, the chamber is like, it's like going in and out of reality. Sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. And Ortegas is like freaking out. He's like, "Oh, we're never gonna get out of here," and da 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 da. And then once again, it emasculating situation, and Uhura tells him to calm down and tells him to breathe, and like holds him and all this stuff, and then he calms down. So again, we have to emasculate the men. Then they figure out they're like talking to each other, and they have like different pieces of these like tablets and stuff, and they figure out how to realign everything so that they're all in the same chamber, because essentially they are in the same chamber but in different parts of reality, or different universes, I guess. And I guess so the whole thing is the people that built this building were like searching for a way to become immortal. And I think there's several different possibilities they're setting up. Either they are ancient Gorn species of some type, or an ancient Gorn rivalry of some type, or what came to mind is maybe they're the origin of the Pah-wraiths. I don't know that. That was my initial thought. Or they're the maybe these people, not the little people trapped in the balls, but the people that build this structure are like Q. What the Q used to be? I don't. They're setting something up. Something up. So now that everybody's all in the same room, Spock does some. Spock like looks down and sees that his finger is like scratched, and he has green blood, so they didn't screw that up. And he's like, I don't remember being cut like that. And they're talking about there's like this, so the platform that leads them to the door is gone, and they trying to figure out how to get across this chasm. And that's when Spock realizes it's inverted causality, and everybody's like, you have to explain that to me. And inverted causality essentially is there's a effect before the cause, because he leans down, and that's when he scratches himself. So his finger was bleeding first before he scratched himself. So Spock theorizes that they just have to have, he says, they just have to have a leap of faith, basically. So again, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where Indy is walking across that bridge that you can't see, same deal. They initially argue with it, and Chapel's like, no way, and Spock's like, no, this is what you have to do. Corby doesn't like the idea because it's just theory, and Spock's like, no, this is exactly what you have to do. And this is a concept that I've never heard of before, so good on them for introducing a new scientific concept. And I've said before that they do have a science advisor, and I guess they kind of discuss things with the science advisor, and maybe the science advisor comes up with an idea, and then they figure out how to make a script out of it. I guess. Um, but and a lot of people make fun of that, but because of the terrible writing and da da da. And I'm like, hey, at least they're trying to do that. At least there's that. I mean, they did that in TNG and stuff. Um, just because it's terrible writing doesn't mean I can't give them credit for throwing in like real science concepts. So they successfully walk as they take the step, the bridge to the door, shows up, just like Indiana Jones. That's why I say like they rip off a lot of things. They do homage, like they did with Jaws. That seems clear that that's an homage to Jaws. This is like they're just plain out ripping off things. I think nitpicking nerd put a video together of all the things that they rip off. So back on the ship, Gamble is like attacking the guard through the force field of the brig. So he's on the brig and he attacks the guard. So he's able to walk through the force field, and then he he's in engineering. He's trying to take over the ship, and he's trying to take over the ship from engineering, and he's got a phaser pointed at Pelia and Kirk's brother and Scotty, and then Mbinga shows up and he's like, I'm not gonna, you're not, he's like, no way, you're not gonna shoot them. And he doesn't say that, but I can't remember the exact dialogue. And basically he shoots him, or no, Pelia shoots him. So she had a phaser the whole time. So what the hell? And then there's a point where Pike is talking to Captain Baytel about what happened in sickbay, and she basically describes it as like an instinct, and they kind of say it's because of her Gorn DNA. So he like instinctually knew that she wanted to fight this guy, and then they're having another briefing where Pelia says that there's real evil in the universe, and that makes me think, well, Star Trek has always kind of steered away from God, but now maybe they're not. I don't know. But there's real evil in the universe, and these are like ancient evil beings, which again made me think it was the Paul race. And then Mbinga is like sending a message to Campbell's family, and in the background there's like a screen, and it says Vesda life form. I don't know what that means. I have no clue what that means, but I guess they're setting up something. So let me take a look. It looks like there's a couple people out in the chat. Oh, it's DJ Play Nice. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, but that wraps it up on that. I guess I'll give myself a like. Yeah, that's the episode. I don't know. It's better than the last one. There's good ideas in there. I think we're finally at a strange new world. If I have to be generous, I'd get a 6.5, maybe something like that. The teenager talk at the beginning was just atrocious. The rest was okay. You know, introducing new science concepts gives them points. Going to a strange new world gives them points. Doing something TOS like gives them points. Um, uh, you know, I mean, that's introducing this new life form. You know, is it? I don't know. There's only like, well, I guess it's not too late because they're getting 5 seasons, right? So they could play around with that a little bit, I guess. Um, so we'll see where it goes. And I'll try to do. So I'll watch this week's episode comes out tomorrow. I'll watch that and I'll do a review. I'm probably gonna do the review on Sunday after I do my Red Hour show. Uh, but last week's episode, I mean, not the previous episode, tested my patience, and I almost wanted to give up on this show, and I'm sure a lot of people did give up on it. Um, so anyway, that's it for me. Uh, I was gonna try to make it short, but there was a lot going. There was a lot to talk about because they cram a lot of stuff into the dialogue and stuff to, I guess, to pad it out. I don't know, but that's it for me. Have a good night, everyone. Oh, and thanks for coming by, DJ Play Nice, and thanks for all the lurkers.